What's up guys, it's all Anthony and I am on the Grom today to give you a highly requested video. I've had a lot of people ask me how to ride a Honda Grom. So today I thought I'd give you guys a beginner's guide on riding a Honda Grom and basically everything that entails. Now I realize that there is a million different videos on how to ride a motorcycle. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, but I do want to make more of a Grom focused video specifically on how to ride a Grom. So today I'm going to do that. So we're going to start off by finding a nice quiet area, giving you guys a walk around of the bike, telling you all the little bits and pieces about the bike before you get started, and then we're going to start the tutorial. So I'll see you guys in a minute. Alright guys, so with the bike parked, I thought this would be a good opportunity to go over all of the buttons, switches, and doodads that make the Grom work. Now, if you're familiar with the Grom or familiar with motorcycles, or maybe have ridden one in the past, you may want to skip this portion of the video as this is going to be more for beginners and people that are completely new to motorcycles. Now, I know my Grom is modified, I just want to point that out. However, this is still going to have the meat and bones of a Grom. It's still going to have all the same buttons and switches, so don't let that fool you there. So, with that said, we're going to start from the top of the Grom and then work our way down going over all the bits and pieces. So walking up to the Grom, first thing we're going to do is take a seat and make ourselves comfortable because we're going to be going over this whole top section of the handlebars. Now the first thing that catches your eye when you're sitting on the bike is this gauge cluster here, right? And everybody tends to really hyper focus on everything that's on this gauge here when learning how to ride a motorcycle, and I personally don't think that's the best way to go about it. I think riding a bike should be mostly based off of feel rather than a calculated approach, right? I know a lot of people focus way too much on RPMs and their miles per hour and everything. Basically, when riding a bike, especially riding the Grom, you can do this all based off of feel, and that's how people learn how to ride dirt bikes, right? There's no gauges on dirt bikes. People are going based off of feel, and when they hit that rev limiter, they know. Same thing as a Grom. This is really going to be used more for reference rather than a direct approach as to learning the bike itself. So with that said, once you turn it on, the first thing you're going to see is going to be a green N here, and that stands for neutral. That means the bike can freely roll back and forth and is not in any gear at all whatsoever. Now, however, if I click it down a gear, it does not let me roll any further than that because I'm in first gear. So back up to neutral there's a green light. Now, next to that, you're going to have your indicators for your blinker. You're going to have left and you're going to have right, and that's going to be pretty standard, same thing you'd see on a car. Next thing you know, you're going to see your horn, and we got our brights here, which you can't see because the bike is not on right now, but basically you'd have a little blue light showing that you have your brights on. Now below that you have your fuel gauge here. I am at full life there on my gas, and then across the board here you have your RPMs, and that's going to show basically how fast the engine is revving, right? And so the RPMs, again, people get way too lost in the RPMs. It's way too calculated, right? Let's forget that. We're going based off of feel today. So those are just going to be used for reference. Now the biggest letters there are going to be your miles per hour. Now you're not going to break any major land speed records with the Grom, so don't count on that getting too high, but that's going to be right in the middle. Then to the right of that, you're going to have your trip A and trip B, and that can all be adjusted with your select button and set button here, and then you have your time down below there to show your clock. So that's the gauge cluster right there. Again, it's a reference point, right? The only time you're really going to be looking at this is going to be while you're riding the bike. You're not going to be sitting there looking down at that every second, as you're learning how to ride. Don't get too lost in that. Now, to the left of the handlebars right here is we just have your grip, we have your mirror, and then in this clamshell cluster right here, you're going to have your brights, and then your normal low beams. Below that is you're going to be your horn. Now the horn is actually pretty nice on the Grom. I think it's helpful for people that are new to riding motorcycles. It's nice and big, it's really loud, and if you're riding in traffic or if you're needing to use your horn, I mean, it's right there and it's really accessible, rather than on most motorcycles it's a smaller button down below. Now below the horn you have your turn signals. These, just as simple as in a car, it's very straightforward. Left to go left, right to go right, and then to cancel it out, all you do is click the middle and it cancels it back out. Over here we have our clutch. So when learning the motorcycle itself, in general, the best thing to remember is The driver's side, the left side of the bike, is everything you need to shift, right? Your shifter pedal is down below, your clutch is here. So shifting on the left, right? Braking is on the right. This is your brake over here. You have your front brake, and then you have your rear brake down below is your foot brake. So braking right, shifting left. Remember, that's easy. People try to complicate that. That's it. You know, shift left, brake right, that's it. Going to the right side, you'll have this little doohickey here, and most people wonder what that is, and that is going to be your front brake fluid, right? Your front brakes basically are based off of pressure. You need fluid in here in these lines to build pressure in order to brake and to have that actual caliper grip onto the brake disc itself. So that's going to be your fluid there. It's really easy. It has a little sight glass on here. You'll know if it's full or if it's low. If you can see a little bubble right there based off of the top, then you'll know that it's full. Now, to the right of that, we have I call this the kill switch / start clamshell. So what you'll have is this big red button, and that basically what that does is it sends an electrical signal to the bike saying that yes, this is okay to turn on, right? Or it's okay to turn off. Basically, power on. You'll actually hear everything, and then kill it, power off. Now below that we have the starter. Now in order to electric start this bike, without having to run it and then drop the clutch, right? Because this bike doesn't have a kickstart on it, that electrical switch needs to be on, sending current to the bike, and then that simply turns the bike on, and that's it. So to turn it off, you have the option to either kill switch it, which there's a big argument on this. Some people say it's better to kill switch it, some people it's better to turn the key off. I typically reach for the key and turn the engine off that way. I think it's more of a preference. They both do the same thing. However, the biggest argument is that the more you use this is an electrical piece, the more that's going to wear out versus just turning off the bike like you would have to do in general. So then to the right of that, we have our mirror, but I guess the most important part of this whole thing is your throttle. This is what's going to be controlling the gas of the vehicle, right? And your throttle is always going to be on the right. That's not something that's different in countries around the world. That's a very universal thing everywhere. Your throttle is always going to be on the right here. So basically, you'll have a little bit of play in it, but then you'll find that it turns, and it has I want to call it spring loaded. It's more wire loaded, I guess, to where you actually it flicks back. You're not going to hold it, and it's not going to stay held open. The second you let it go, it throttles off. So that's going to be all controlled by your hand. Now, other than everything we covered here, the only thing I think I missed is going to be your key down here. So basically, pretty simple. You're going to turn your ignition on. You're always going to have to flick that switch on. My Pro Taper bars kind of get in the way of that sometimes. It's kind of a pain, but it is what it is. Now, if you flick it off, perfect. And then what you can do is to lock the bike, turn the wheel all the way over, push down, and then flick it in. And now what that does is it locks the bars. The bars cannot turn. So if you're parking your bike and you don't want it to get stolen, right? You should always put it in the lock position. That way nobody's hopefully going to take off with your bike. However, it is a Grom and people can just pick it up and run off with it. Not trying to give people ideas, just being honest with that. So back to the normal position where it is off and is unlocked. There you go. All right, so working our way down from the handlebars, we're going to talk about the tank and how you fill the bike up. So what you're going to do is just remove your key here, flick this little tab open, key goes down inside there, give it a twist, and it pops up. So now below there is going to be your fuel. Basically just straightforward. Put the gas nozzle down in there and fill it up. You have a couple little bars there to indicate kind of a nice level area to where you typically want to fill the bike to. Here's your gas cap. Now put it back on. Now this is really easy. Now the way to do this is just match it up. There's a little arrow there that says front and it says push lock. I grab my fingers here, click that, and the bike is now locked. Now before we get to the engine stuff in the rear of the bike, going over the front, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. You have your headlight here, headlight housing. You have your turn signal brackets, also referred to as the boomerangs. You have your forks here, and now your forks, those are what basically control the front suspension. I mean, this is everything that the front suspension is. Just like on a dirt bike, just like on any other motorcycle, you're going to have forks here, and so those forks are filled with fluid. They have a spring inside of them. Now they have a seal here to prevent that fluid from leaking, right? Because basically you have pressure. You're building that pressure to be able to have that rebound and everything. Now, basically, I mean, that it's pretty straightforward. Grom forks are pretty indestructible. I have yet to see somebody blow the forks on a front Grom or have a seal completely blow loose. I mean, these bikes are built to do wheelies. They can take the abuse there, which is really nice. Now, they don't have any adjustability settings. On most big bikes, you'll have the ability to control your dampening and all of that to basically compensate for how much rebound you have and how it takes bumps. On the Grom, you don't have that. You just kind of get what you get. Now, going below that, we have the front brake here. Now, this is the front brake caliper. This is a Nissan front brake caliper. It's actually close to a full-size brake caliper that you would see on a normal bike, and it's pretty nice. I like the fact that they put those on there. And then next to that, you have your front brake rotor. Now, unlike bigger motorcycles, typically you'll see two rotors with two calipers on each side to give it more braking power. On the Grom, they only put one caliper and one rotor, but to be honest, that's pretty much all you need. This bike stops on a dime. I think it has great stopping power. My bike does not have ABS. However, there is some Groms out there that do have ABS, which basically keep it from locking up in the front if you were to ever go and grab a handful of brake. Now, on the subject of suspension, we'll go over the rear really quick before we jump to the engine stuff. Now, the rear suspension on my bike is an Öhlins upgraded rear shock. The stock suspension looks similar to this, minus this big canister here. So if you were just to delete that out of there, basically it would look just like that with a black spring on it. Now, the stock suspension does not have any adjustability, right? There's no rings on here to adjust the ride height or the dampening of it or anything like that. It's basically just like the front forks, you kind of get what you get. And the rear suspension on the stock Grom is relatively soft. So something to keep in mind if you do decide to go two up and put somebody on the rear of the bike and have two riders on there, you'll notice that the stock spring may bottom out depending on how much you guys weigh, but that would be the rear suspension of the bike. Now, for the rear brake, this is something that most people don't see or really notice on a Grom, but here is your rear brake. Basically, your reservoir is right here with your lines that come down through here underneath this this fender hugger, then go to your rear brake here. So this is, again, another almost full-size Nissan brake that you would find on a big bike. So I'm really proud of Honda for putting good brakes on these bikes. I think that's really important. But here is your caliper itself, and then you have your rear brake rotor. So just like the front, pretty straightforward. You just have one of these. Basically, you're going to hit your rear brake pedal. That's what that is on that side, and that's what locks that up or slows you down depending on how you're riding the bike. All right, so working our way to the engine here. This is the beating heart of the Honda Grom. This is what makes it move. This is a 125cc 4-cycle single-cylinder engine. This is something that Honda's been making forever. If anybody knows how to make a 125cc engine, it's Honda. I mean, these things can take an absolute beating, and they're one of the most reliable engines of all time. I mean, seriously, guys. I mean, this thing, you cannot kill it, and if you do kill it, you're trying to kill it, and even if you try to kill it, you may not kill it. I mean, these things are just amazing. So what I love about this is that it's fuel injected, right? So there's no carburetor or anything like that. You don't have to clean a carb. You don't have to worry about that. It's all fuel injected. It's a really simple motor, and most people who buy the Groms find that they can work on the motor themselves. I mean, I do most of the things on there. The only thing I don't mess with is the valve clearance, but other than that, everything is straightforward. Oil changes, all of that are things that you can do yourself. Now, the one thing about this engine is that it has a spinner. It does not have an oil filter that you would find typically on a big motorcycle. Basically, what there is there's this little rotating thing in here that basically sends the oil and circulates that through the motor itself. Now, that is something you do have to clean because, again, there is no oil filter. So if there is any gunk, it gets bound up inside that little spinning thing. So basically, you'd have to remove this and then grab a paper towel and some cleaner and go through, and then also rinse out. There's a little grate in there, a little, I don't know, I wouldn't call it a filter, but it's a little metal grate to where if there is any metal shards that break down over time, that's where they're going to land. But basically, really straightforward motor here. I mean, basically this is how it stays cool up here with these little fins. It is an air-cooled motor, meaning that there is no other type of coolant. There's no other fluid in here except for oil. So you'll have that. You'll have your spark plug up here, and then below that you'll have your exhaust. Now, briefly going over the exhaust, this is my Zoom Brute exhaust. A lot of people ask me what this is. This is the latest edition. I did make a complete video on this exhaust, but I absolutely love it. The stock exhaust on the Grom, on the SF models, you're going to find that they're a low mount, so they'll come down here. They have a big canister to mute the sound, and then the exhaust piping goes right here. Now, on the OG Groms, you'll have basically your piping come down through here, and then you'll have your muffler come up through the top side of the bike there. So that's the exhaust. Pretty simple. I mean, you can install an exhaust yourself if you decide to go aftermarket. I have, I think, 3 different videos at this point showing you how to install an exhaust. It's pretty easy. Now, spinning around the bike for a brief moment, we're going to talk about everything on this side of the bike. Now, remember, like I said before, left is to shift, right? This is going to be your clutch right here. This is going to be your shifter down here. This is what's going to control your gears. And on a Grom, it's 1 down and 3 up. Now, neutral is just right a half step above first gear. So 1 down, then half a step up is your neutral, and then follow the next step up, and you're in your second gear. Now, for people new to motorcycles, it's confusing. I get it, that when people tell you neutral is a half a step, you wonder, what does that mean? What do you mean half a step? Well, basically, instead of going a full click, you'll feel a half click in between, and it's all based off of feel. Like I said, we're not paying attention to that gauge cluster here, because with a Grom, you have a lot of false neutrals, and you'll have that light that doesn't always flick on. That's just how Groms work. They're not the most advanced machines out there. So basically, when it comes to shifting, you have to go based off of feel. You have to feel that half to click to know that you have hit neutral. So this is what's going to help adjust to that and change gears, right? That's what you're going to be using. Over here, we have just our typical, this is what you put your pegs on, your foot on. It's your foot peg. You have the same thing on the other side, and then you have your rear passenger pegs here. If you're ever riding with a passenger, I've done it a couple times. You know, it's fun. Now, coming back here is going to be your main chain, right? This is what's driving the bike. This is what's turning this rear wheel here. Now, I have a couple of videos on this to where you can see everything a little bit more clearly, and I can show you how to change the chain itself. Now, beyond that, here we have our chain adjusters. Biggest improvement you can make on a Grom. If you buy a Grom, buy aftermarket chain adjusters. I swear to you, it'll be the best thing you ever buy. These chain adjusters, the stock ones, are horrible. On my bike itself, I have the OTB chain adjusters, and they were one of the best purchases I've ever made. I absolutely love it. And so you'll have your chain here, and that adjusts the slack. Now, this whole big metal piece right here coming down here is called the swing arm, and that is what everything rests on, right? So if you ever heard the term swing arm, that's what that means. It is the actual arm holding in that rear wheel. Now, coming around to the back of the bike, this is another just straightforward, pretty simple stuff here, but basically you're going to have your license plate. That's always going to be mounted on the rear. These stock Groms have the whale tail, that's stock, that keep the, it's a fender basically is what it is. It keeps dirt from flying up, but they look hideous, so everybody takes them off. Basically what I did is I took mine off and I replaced it with a subframe here. Now I have my rear turn signals up underneath here, and that's going to show my left and right for the people behind me, and then of course I have my big brake light. Basically, the stock OEM brake light is an LED setup. It is bright. I think it works really well for people to see when you are braking. But that kind of wraps up the rear of the bike. Now, the last thing I wanted to go over, and probably the thing I'm going to regret because I'm probably not going to be able to get it back on, is the seat of the bike, right? Because you're probably wondering, where's the battery, right? Where's all the electrical go? Where do I put my paperwork for when I get my motorcycle license? You know, all my insurance and stuff like that. Where do I put it, right? You're going to put it underneath this seat here. Basically, that's what you do. Is you're going to take your key here. Down here is going to be how you unlock the seat. So you're going to give that a turn, yank that up, and that is going to be under the seat. So right here is where you have your gas. That is actually your gas tank right there. And then coming back over here, you have your battery. You have your actual fuses here, which are going to be controlling the electrical of the bike. So if anything ever goes out, like your gauge cluster goes out, or your turn signals, or something is finicky, this is typically the first place you want to check, is check your fuses, see if any of them have burnt out. Now, other than that, I just kind of put my paperwork inside here, nothing special. This is where I have my wiring for my rear tail light, LED stuff, and this is also where you're going to reset the ECU, is actually with that plug right there, and I have a video on that as well. So you can store a little bit of stuff under here, definitely not a water bottle or anything. If you decide to hang your helmet from your bike, you do have a little metal bar here to where you can run your helmet strap through there, and if you want to hang it off the bike in case you're going into a store or something. But that's that. Now the hardest part is actually just getting this back on. I have not mastered this yet, even after almost 2 years on the bike. I typically just hit it a couple I hate this. Oh man, come on. See, this is why I didn't want to do this for you guys. Not gonna be able to get this stupid. Oh, there we go. Alright, it's on. Thank God. That only took 5 minutes or so, and if you have a Grom, you know what I mean. It's a total pain in the ass. Alright, so if you've made it this far in the video, congratulations, because we are finally going to start riding this bike. I know that was a lot of information, but that was definitely more for the beginners. It was more for everybody that has never ridden a motorcycle, that just wants to know a little bit about them, and hopefully that was helpful for you. So now we're going to actually ride the bike. But before we begin, if you are using this as a direct reference, like for example, if you have this video up and you have a Honda Grom in front of you and you're trying to figure out how to ride this thing, please, please, please gear up. Wear protective gear. And that's no matter what. I mean, you should always be wearing gear. I know today I'm wearing short sleeves, but do as I say, not as I do. If this is your first time ever riding a motorcycle, please wear the necessities. Wear a helmet. Wear gloves. Gloves are very important. Wear some jeans. Wear some closed-toed shoes. Wear some type of long sleeve shirt at the very least, if not an actual motorcycle jacket, because guys, fixing road rash and going to the hospital for road rash is so much more expensive than gear. Please gear up. Nobody is too good for gear. Today is just, it's a scorcher out today and it's really hot, and today I'm wearing short sleeves. But probably the most important things, if you decide to not listen to anything I just said, at the very least wear a helmet and wear gloves. I mean, because if you're going to fall on this thing, it's fortunately small enough to where hopefully the damage wouldn't be too bad, but if you do go to fall, the first thing you're going to do is put your hands out, and so wear some gloves, wear some protective gloves. So with that said, let's go ahead and hop on the bike. So getting on a bike, it's straightforward. Literally just kick your leg up and over. I mean, you'll know somebody's never ridden a bike in their life if they can't kick their leg over a bike. It's literally as easy as just kicking it over. And once you get on here, first thing you're going to do is kick up the kickstand. So the kickstand's just down here. Flick that up. You'll hear a nice clink. And balancing on the bike, you should be able to put both of your feet down on a Honda Grom. This is small enough. I'm 6'1". I can honestly, guys, I can spread my legs as far as, as I can. I can still touch the ground. And so you should definitely be able to balance on this. If you can't, maybe do a 1-foot motion. Try to balance yourself. But balancing yourself on a Grom, it's just like balancing yourself on a bicycle, and riding a bike or riding a motorcycle is very similar to riding a bicycle. I mean, basically, the second you learn, you never really forget. It might just take but a quick refresher to get caught up, though. So once you're on the bike, get comfortable with it. I mean, roll it back and forth if you need to. If this is your first time ever on a bike, just get comfortable, right? Basically, you're steering up here, being able to move the handlebars. This, in conjunction with how you lean the bike, right, is going to control how you steer, right? You're turning this, but you're also leaning. That's an important part of it. If you ever search how to ride a motorcycle, you'll see the word counter steering. Don't even pay attention to that word. That's a super confusing word. Counter steering. It doesn't make sense. I mean, it makes sense, but it doesn't make sense, right? Counter steering is just steering. That's just how you steer, right? But counter steering, the idea is that you're turning the opposite way of which you're leaning to be able to go in for a harder turn, right? Because not every turn is controlled with your handlebars, right? You have to lean as well, but when you lean, I can't lean into a turn like this. I'm gonna drop the bike, right? If I lean into a turn like this, right, I'm going to be able to use my body weight and use my positioning to steer the bike, but I don't want to turn in too aggressively. I mean, I hope that makes sense, guys, but the word countersteering is confusing. So again, we're steering the bike just in the meantime, just using our handlebars here, getting control of it. Walk the bike around if you want. This is really easy to do. Walk it around, hit the brake here, learn how to stop, roll yourself forward, hit the brake again, feel the clutch. Now, the clutch on a Grom is super forgiving. It's got a little bit of slop to it. It's got a little bit of play. This is an easy clutch to learn on, if not the easiest clutch to learn on. So basically, here's your clutch. You can 2-finger it. You can 3-finger it. I typically like to 3-finger it. That's what feels comfortable for me. Some people like 2. Some people like 1. However you want to do it. However you can pull that thing back, that's how you're going to do it. So get yourself on the bike. Make sure the kickstand is up. We're going to go ahead and flick on the bike here. Make sure our kill switch is in the on position, which is just going to be the round position, and everything looks good. Everything checks out. You don't hear any weird sounds. Go ahead and turn on the bike. All right, so with the bike on, right, get comfortable. Get a feel of it, right? Rev that engine. I got an exhaust on mine, so it sounds good. But get used to revving that. Look at the RPM, see what happens on there. You'll see that they move. When you turn this, those move. That makes sense, right? Now, get a feel of it. Once you turn on the bike, that doesn't change the way the bike feels as you're rolling, right? It should still feel exactly the same, just a little bit more vibration there. Now, once you have that, now we're going to go to the actual engagement of the gear, right? So again, left is to shift, right is to brake, right? We're not focusing on this side right now. We're focusing on this side. So what we're going to do to get it into first gear, pull in the clutch, go all the way down to the handlebar, and then put your foot down here on the peg. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go down one. We're going to click it. You're going to feel the click. You're going to hear the click. That means we are down first gear because that neutral green light has disappeared. So with now being in first gear, this is the best way to get started right here. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start letting go of the clutch. Let go of the clutch, let go of the clutch. And as I'm letting go, I can feel the bike wanting to roll forward, right? Pull it back in, it stops rolling forward. Start letting it out so slightly, and it wants to start to roll forward, right? So basically, that clutch is ready to engage. It's ready to take off. So as I'm letting go, bike wants to start rolling forward. Now, if you put it in second, you'll probably just end up killing it. And first, this is what it's going to do. It's going to start rolling forward. So what you can start doing is start letting go and walk with it. Now, what you can do is you can fluctuate with it, right? Because it might start to want to die, and if it wants to start to die, pull back in. Again, start to walk with it. It's walking, I'm just literally walking my legs with it right now, and it's wanting to go. I'm going 1 mile an hour right now. Congratulations. There we go. Okay, so for reference, that's how to do it. So we're going to go back up into neutral, which is half a step. So just a nice little half click. And if it doesn't go in, you can always kind of roll the bike back and forward, but now we have the green light on, we can let go of the clutch, right? When it's in neutral, you don't have to be holding on to the clutch. It's unnecessary, right? It's because it's already in neutral. It's not going to kill itself. So now we're going to introduce the gas. We're going to start giving it some throttle, right? So again, clutch in, click down into first gear, and now this is the best way to do it. As you're letting go, right? The bike wants to start to roll forward. Right? Grab the throttle here, and then just slowly start turning it. As you're letting go of the clutch, or as you're kind of slowly releasing it, you're giving it a little bit of throttle, and now it's actually starting to putt. Right? It's actually starting to go. Now what you're going to do is release the clutch all the way and keep the throttle on. Keep slowly giving it a little bit of gas. I have barely have this thing turned, but I am now moving. So right now I'm in first gear, right? So this is now something I can play around with. I can get a feel of the bike, right? Now I'm starting to turn, kind of feel the way my movement is. I'm not going balls to the wall and gassing it out, but I am just keeping it around 10 miles an hour. And notice I'm doing this off of feel. I have not talked about RPMs. I have not talked about what mile an hour to look for, right? I'm just going off of feel right now. So giving it gas, and what I can do is I can give it a little bit more gas. And then I let go, or you throttle down, right? And there it is. So give it some gas, throttle down, and it will stay in first gear. Pretty simple. Now it's just like riding a bike. Get used to steering, get used to putting around in first gear. Perfect. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come to a stop. So as I'm giving it gas here, I'm going to let out of the gas and I'm going to pull the clutch in. You're going to hear the engine simmer down, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to brake. So at the same time, I am going to be pressing the front and rear brake here. Well, actually, I just kind of rolled to a stop. So let's try that again. Front brake. Remember, the handle controls the front, the foot peg controls the rear brake. You always want to use both at the same time. There's never going to be an instance where you shouldn't typically use both. Don't grab just front because you might lock up the front and flip the bike. Don't grab just rear because you might lock up the rear tire. Do both at the same time to keep a stable, balanced feel of braking. So let's try that again. We're going to start letting go of the first, or letting go of the clutch, or slowly releasing it, I guess. And as it wants to start moving forward, we're going to start introducing some gas. Walk it, walk it, walk it, and we are good, right? Let go of the clutch. We can give it gas now. We are in the safe first gear zone. So give it some gas. I'm going to let go of the throttle, or release the throttle. And what I'm doing is, as I'm coming to a stop, I'm going to slowly grab the front brake and press on the rear brake. Pull on the clutch, come to a stop. Just like that, right? Clutch is still in. I can't let go of that because I'm not in neutral. If I let go of that, the bike dies. So what I'm going to do, kick it up to a half step, get it up to neutral. I can roll the bike back and forth if I need to get it there. Again, the Grom, as easy as it is to learn on, the gearbox isn't the most forgiving. So it's in neutral now. Now what you should do is be mastering that. Get used to moving in first gear and stopping in first gear. Remember, as you're slowing down, pull the clutch in, brake both brakes at the same time. I know that's a lot of information. Maybe for just reference, if you're going a slow speed, maybe just try using the rear brake or just try using the front. There's ways to do this, but now we're going to try to get into second gear. So clutch in, click down into first. Again, start releasing, give it some gas, walk it, walk it, walk it, and then balance up on it, feet on the foot pegs, and now we're riding. So what I'm going to do now is shift it into second. As I'm giving it gas in first, right, I'm going to back off of the throttle, and as I'm backing off the throttle, I'm going to pull in the clutch and then kick up to second gear, right? So how you kick up to neutral, right, same thing, but we're going to kick up all the way up into second gear. We're going to kick it up the full notch rather than just a half a notch. So again, as I release the throttle, I pull in the clutch and shift. So let's try that really quick. So release the throttle, clutch in, shift up to second, release the clutch. Now, I'm not giving it gas again, right? I'm not re-gassing it yet. I just wanted to get it into second. Now that I'm into second, I can start giving it gas. And you might have some RPMs bogged down, but that's normal. So just kind of get it back up to speed. So now I'm in second gear. So when in second gear, you have a lot more play. I mean, this thing, now you have some pep to it now. So get used to second gear, get used to rolling around, get used to braking, right? And obviously you're not going to be riding like this, but I mean, this is what I mean. Just kind of get used to second, get used to braking. Now what I'm going to do is, just for reference, I'm going to brake in second gear. So I'm going to release the throttle in second, clutch in, and brake. Now what do you guys notice? Bike doesn't die, right? Because I have the clutch in, right? If I get it down to neutral, which is a half a kick down, it's a neutral. I can let go of the clutch. So, I mean, that's second gear, first to second. Let's try it one more time. First gear, give it some gas, take off. We'll slowly release throttle, clutch in, kick it up to second, re-gas. Now, one thing you don't want to do is, because what a lot of people will do when they first start riding a bike is they'll do this. Right? That's because they didn't let go of the gas. They're holding the gas in, so it has a surge of RPM and pulls them forward, and it freaks them out, and they're like, holy crap, what was that? And I'm like, dude, you got to roll off the gas. So remember, whenever you're rolling off the gas, that's when you clutch in. So roll off the gas, clutch in. I'm going to kick it down into neutral once the clutch is in, and now I'm in neutral. Now I can just coast. I mean, technically the bike is just going to roll until it comes to a stop or until I brake it. So front brake, rear brake, roll to a stop. So that's first and second gear, guys. So what we're going to do is we're going to get out on a main road, and I'm going to show you how to kick it up to third and how to kick it up to fourth gear. All right, so time to test my skills. What I'm going to do is clutch in here, kick it down into first gear, and I'm ready to get on my main road and take my maiden voyage. So we're slowly releasing the clutch, let it start walking, give it some gas, and bam, there's first gear. Foot up on the pegs. I'm going to do clutch in, roll off the throttle, kick it up to second, let go, re-roll on the throttle. Oh, stop sign, right? That's scary, right? You see a stop sign, what do? Clutch in, front brake, rear brake, kick it down into neutral if you like, let go of the clutch, come to a stop completely, look around, looks safe to me, first gear, again, take off. All right, so we're at our next stop sign. Again, don't be scared of it. And this one's kind of on an incline, right? So if you find yourself rolling back, right, and you find yourself moving, one thing that you can do is just hold on to one of the brake pedals, whether it's the rear or the front, whatever works for you, and that'll keep you from rolling backwards so you don't have all this weight on your legs trying to keep you up. So what we're gonna do now, we're at our stop sign, looks clear to me, back into first, give it some gas, start walking with it, get out on the main road. Clutch in, roll off throttle, kick it up to second, re-gas. Now third is the exact same thing, right? Roll off the throttle, clutch in, up to third. Roll off, clutch in, kick it up to third, roll back on the throttle. Now we're in third gear. So third gear has even more pep, right? Now we've made it this far, so let's go up to fourth. Roll off the throttle, clutch in, up to fourth. Let go, roll back on the throttle. So now we're in fourth gear. Now get comfortable with it, move around, find that you can actually steer using your body weight, your leaning position, right? Rotate your body, use your hips to kind of lean, use your butt cheeks. If I lean to one side, you'll feel the bike move to one side. Lean to the other, it moves again. Give it some gas. Now since we're coming to a stop, one thing that you can do, this is for beginners, right? Because we're going to talk about downshifting here in a second. Just go ahead, hold in the clutch, and then roll off the throttle, and then kick down, kick down, kick down. Now we're in first gear, right? And just hold in the clutch for that span, because we're going to cover downshifting here in a minute, but I wanted that to be easy for you. So we're in first gear here, check both ways, start giving it gas, and we are good to go. It's taken off, take it up into second, kick it up into third, kick it up into fourth, and there we go, we're riding again. Now one thing I want to do is cover downshifting, right? We need to learn how to downshift properly. Now Rev-Match downshifting is, I would consider it to be a more of an advanced technique. Not everybody can do that right off the bat. So right now I'm in fourth, right? But I'm lacking power. I need to get down into third gear. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clutch in, roll off the throttle, kick it down, slowly let go of the clutch, right? Roll back on the throttle, and now I'm in third gear. That's a very slow movement, but it works, right? I'm in third now, I got power, clutch in, kick it back up to fourth. That's all my power there. All right, coming to a roundabout here, what I'm gonna do is I'm actually, while I'm in fourth, I'm going to start rear braking and front braking. Now what I'm gonna do, clutch in, kick it down into third, clutch out, start slightly rolling on the throttle, and it looks like I'm going even slower, right? Clutch in, kick it down into second, clutch out, roll on the throttle. So now I'm in second gear. Second gear feels good. I mean, second gear, this is the speed I'd like to be at if I'm going around a roundabout. I'm giving it throttle again. I'm gonna reach for the clutch here in a second. Throttle, roll off the throttle, clutch in, up to third. Roll on the throttle, roll off off the throttle, clutch in, up to fourth. Now guys, once you get good at this, this is all a super fluid movement, right? I know it's sounding slow and it's sounding really tedious, but it's really easy. I mean, shifting down into third from fourth right here is as simple as shifting up into fourth. I mean, that's how fast you can get with this. I mean, it's just all about getting used to the movement, getting used to riding the bike. But that's pretty much how it works. So right now I'm in fourth gear, feels good, but I want to drop it down into third. So what I'm going to do, roll off the gas, clutch in, down to third. Now what I'm going to do is show you guys one of the best ways to make that movement feel better and not as abrupt. As you're downshifting and letting go of the clutch handle, right, kind of slowly start to roll back on the throttle, right? So for example, I'm going to roll off third, clutch in, down into second, and as I'm releasing the clutch, I'm actually throttling to make that movement more fluid, to make it be smoother. So back up into third, for example, clutch in, kick it up to third, gas back on. Now I want to kick it down into second here, so I'm going to go clutch in, kick it down to second, and slowly roll on the throttle. I don't know if this is a stop sign, but I'm just going to go for it. There you go. First gear, clutch in, kick it up to second, gas back on. All right guys, so down into third, down into second, and I'm coming to a stop, so I'm giving it rear brake, a little bit of front brake. Gonna kind of roll into this. As I'm putting in second, gonna start giving it gas, and there we go. And that's how I'd probably take my turns. Most turns that are slow you can take in second gear. You don't need to go down into first gear, because downshifting into first gear on a Grom is no bueno, right? The bike does not like that. It's really hard on the bike. Always try to take turns or downshifts into second gear. But yeah, so that's second, guys. That's third, that's fourth. I mean, you've learned pretty much how to shift this bike and how to ride this bike like I would, right? And like I said before, there is more advanced techniques. There is rev matching. There's things like that. But in the meantime, if you're just learning how to ride a Grom, these are the movements that you need to be making. Now, one thing I want to cover is some people may ask, can you roll into a stop, right? If you're coming to a stop, can you just get into the appropriate gear, or can you just get it down into neutral to roll? And you can. So here's second, here's third, clutch in, front and rear brake, emergency stop, bam. Bike's not dead. I'm in third gear right now. So I just rolled to a stop, and now that I'm at the stop, I can kick it down into second and back into first. You might just have to roll the bike a little bit. Now you may be wondering, can you kick it into neutral from a rolling speed and roll to a stop? And you can do that as well. So down into first gear here, second, third, fourth. So clutch in, click down, click down, click down. Oh, click it back up to get in neutral, and now I'm just rolling, and now I can just roll to my stop or my destination. So a little bit of front brake, a little bit of rear brake, and then come to my stop using both brakes. Just like that. All right, guys, so once you've mastered the art of riding the Grom and just getting used to it, you guys are good to go. You guys are jumping on the street. You're probably going to need a motorcycle endorsement or a license or permit, depending on where you live. It is a 125cc, and I know most places in the country require a license to be able to ride the Grom. And since it is a street bike, you also need insurance for this thing. And once you begin mastering all of the different things on the Grom, that's when you can start doing the fun stuff, guys. I know a lot of people see us doing wheelies and videos and things like that, and that's all stuff that comes with time, that happens after you've learned how to ride a motorcycle and have gotten comfortable with things. So you get to do fun stuff like this. Alright guys, so I think it's going to wrap up today's video. I hope this video was helpful for those of you who are looking to buy a Honda Grom or want a Grom in the future, or maybe just wanted to learn how to ride a motorcycle. This is a pretty straightforward method to riding in general, so this video can be applied to any major bike as well. The biggest difference between a Grom and a big bike is obviously the size, and then the fact that the Grom only has 4 gears rather than most bikes having 5 or 6. Anyways guys, I think the Grom is a great bike to learn how to ride on. I don't necessarily think it's the best first bike in the world, but yeah, I think this is probably one of the most user-friendly bikes out there. Really easy to ride. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. You guys can subscribe for more. As always, I'll catch you guys in the next one. This is All Day Anthony. Peace.